Hey all, Tom Moran here from Tom's Big Spiders. Well, it's finally here. We're going to do an update on my APHONOPELMA species. This might be the most requested video I've had lately, and I think people are starting to get frustrated with me because I'm like, I'll get to one eventually, I'll get to one eventually, I'll get to one eventually. It wasn't because I didn't want to put one together. It was because A, mine usually burrow. The majority of my APHONOPELMA have areas and substrates that they can burrow in. So when I try to get images of them, they just shoot to their burrows to hide. And then B, there hasn't been much to report. I had a bunch of people asking for footage of my APHONOPELMA mooreae. They're like, oh, it must be beautiful now. Well, it just molted. It darkened up a bit, but does it look like the beautiful, almost GBB-like spider that we see pictures of online? No, not even close. It's barely growing. So one of the things about APHONOPELMA species that I like to impart to folks is they are gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous spiders. I love them. I was one of those people that ignored them for quite some time because they were native to the US. And it was like, for some reason that struck me as boring. But then I realized the error of my ways and started grabbing as many of them as I could. So I'm raising a bunch of them up now, but they do grow super slowly for most people. Every once in a while you get an outlier and somebody will chime in. Mine went from a half an inch to an inch and a half in a year, which is pretty good growth for them. Mine have not been growing that quickly overall, though I have a couple outliers that I'm putting on some decent size. So what we're going to do is go through, take a look at them. I'm going to tell everybody in advance because I always like to be very transparent in my videos. I was unable to get new footage of two species. I'll address it in the video. Could not for the life of me get them out and about. One of them I basically screwed up on. She was out in the open one day. I said, I got to come back up, get some footage of her. And by the time I came back up, I completely forgot about it. She had gone back into her burrow. The other has been a burrower from day one. She was actually one of the spiders I actually did dig up at one point because she burrowed down. I saw that she molted, would not come back up after several weeks. And I cannot catch her out in the open. So we're going to use some old footage for this, but know that they are doing well. I do have a general idea of how big they are. And then in the future, hopefully, if I get some footage of them, we'll probably throw it up and turn in the form of a short so people can just say, yep, here they are right now, but maybe a while. Anyway, enough of me talking. Let's take a look at my APHONOPELMA species. All right, to kick this one off, we're going to start off with APHONOPELMA seemanni, or Costa Rican zebra tarantula. I love this girl here. Now, fun fact, one of my first tarantulas ever back in the 90s was an APHONOPELMA seemanni that I picked up at a reptile show. And unfortunately, I didn't know this at the time. I really didn't know a lot about tarantulas. I had one little book that I had managed to wrangle that gave me some care tips. It ended up being a mature male. So it died after about a year and a half, 2 years or so. And the whole time I thought I had killed the thing, and coming to find out, no, it was just at the end of its life cycle. But anyway, this one here I got from a pet store. It was in terrible shape. I think it was way back in March of 2017. And at that point, it was about a 3-inch or 7.62 centimeter juvenile. She has since molted many times in my care, right around 5 or 6 times, I think. And she is now about 5.5 inches or 14 centimeters. Now, heads up here and full disclosure, I was trying to get new footage of all of the APHONOPELMAs. This is actually older, we'll call it B-roll, where I just kind of catch them out and about. Unfortunately, she was out the other day, right out in the open. She drank some water. She stood right out, and I said, you know what? I'll come back later with my camera and get some pictures of her. And she went back down in her burrow, and that was it. So I did not get any new footage, but she is looking good. She's fattened up. I think she's probably going into pre-molt fairly soon, and she loves to burrow. I do keep the lower levels, and this is going to be a running theme through this. I keep the lower levels of her substrate moist. I do think she was wild caught, therefore she still continues to burrow a bit. She does like those lower levels, but then she'll come up when it gets too moist for her. So next, this is a spider everybody's been asking me for an update on, and I keep telling people, just know I'm never trying to mess with people. If I don't put an update up, it means I have nothing to update. And this has kind of been the case with my APHONOPELMA mooreae, or Mexican jade fuego. These guys are stunning as adults. They almost look like sea pubescens or GBB with the greens and blues and oranges. Just beautiful, beautiful spiders. And like everybody else, when these first hit the trade, I was like, I need to have one of these. So late in 2018, I picked up this one here, which was about a 1/2 inch or 1.27 centimeters or so. Right now, she is a whopping, I will say 3/4 of an inch or 1.9 centimeters, maybe an inch total. She has darkened up a bit, as you can see here, but for whatever reason, mine is growing super slowly. She eats great, she fattens up well, but she just takes a long time to molt. Sometimes I'll think she's all fat. I'll stop feeding her for several months. I will drop a paratum in, she'll eat again. So this one did molt again recently. I was hoping to see some blues and greens, nothing yet. I had somebody contact me recently who had a specimen that was around 1 3/4 inches or so and sporting some color. And I have to tell you, I am so jealous of it because it sounds like they didn't get that one much later than when I got mine. So for whatever reason, mine does well. She burrows. She has moist substrate in the bottom. She's usually burrowed most of the time. If I catch her out and about, it's hard to get footage because she will shoot to that burrow. But eats great, just isn't putting on a massive amount of size. Now, next one we have is my APHONOPELMA hentzi, or Texas brown. It's funny because I recently had 2 people chime in on videos very frustrated with me. One of them flat out angry because apparently I haven't shown enough love to this species. And as I had to explain to them, I can't really talk about mine all that much because mine is still sling size. Now, as adults, these are supposedly awesome spiders. This species grow to sport some gorgeous earthy browns and tans. However, this little guy or gal here is content apparently with just being a brown sling forever. I picked this one up in mid-2017. At that time, it was again about a 1/2 inch or so, or 1.27 centimeters. Right now, I'm going to say it's 1 inch or 2.5 centimeters. Honestly, I don't even think it's that big. Of all the spiders I got, the APHONOPELMA species I got in mid-2017, this is by far the smallest and has been by far the slowest growing one I've kept. Now, she's been a bit of a shy eater. She has done a lot of burrowing, even as a smaller sling. Even now she burrows, but she's out in the open quite a bit. When she was first small, I'd have to feed her super small prey items or let her scavenge feed off pre-killed or cricket drumsticks, which is when you rip the leg off of a cricket and put it in there. But now that she's put on a little bit of size, she's a little bit better with the eating. Now, as you can see, she's a little portly here. I'm hoping to get a molt out of her soon. We shall see. Again, one of the things I've seen with my APHONOPELMA species is that they seem to go into pre-molt. They're not eating, or what will end up happening sometimes is, if you've noticed with APHONOPELMA slings, they get very, very fat. As a matter of fact, I had somebody yell at me recently because they saw a picture of a sling I posted or a video of a sling, and they said it was way too fat. No, they fatten up quite a bit. And unfortunately, sometimes they fatten up, you wait, you don't feed them, a couple months go by, they look like they might have gotten a little smaller, you drop in a prey item, and they'll eat again. So that's what I've seen with these guys, is they just take a long time to molt, and that's been the case with my A. hentzi. Now, next up, we have APHONOPELMA moderatum, or Rio Grande Gold. Again, this was one of the ones I got in mid-2017, and once again, it was about a 1/2 inch or 1.27 centimeters. Right now, this one's putting on some decent. I actually have 2 of them. One of them's a little larger. The larger one we're seeing here is about 1 3/4 inches or 4.5 centimeters. I'm also hoping that this is the right species, and I'm starting to feel much more confident with that. I think the last time I posted something up on these, so a couple people came on and said, I don't think that's the right species. And sometimes there are mistakes made. There's a mix-up, you get the wrong species. Adult females are a gorgeous, kind of orangey gold on their legs, just really beautiful spiders. And I am starting, if you can see here, it's looking like it's starting to get some of that gold. So I'm hoping that with the next molt, this one here, the other one I think is 1 molt behind this one, but with the next molt, this one will start showing some of those colors, and then I can be certain, because I really want one of these. They are just very good looking spiders. So a little bit tan now. There's some dark spots on it. We're going to have to see what the next molt brings, but I have a funny feeling that next molt, we're going to see some of those adult colors, and I can't wait. Again, that's the only problem I have with the APHONOPELMA. The spiders are amazing. I love all my APHONOPELMA species. It's fun to joke about how slowly they grow, but they really are some of the slowest growing spiders, even in comparison to my Brachypelma species or my Grammostola species. Now, we're talking about slower growing ones. We're going to move on to one of my faster growing ones. This is one of my APHONOPELMA chalcodes, or Arizona blondes, which are a hobby staple. I believe they made my list of top beginner species as chosen by keepers. This one I got in the summer of 2018. It was second instar at the pet store I went to. The woman that worked there had bought a female, and the female laid an egg sac and ended up being viable. She had a bunch of babies. She was trying to get rid of them, so I ended up buying a baby, even though I already had one. And I'm glad I did, because I got to raise it up from a sling. So at that point, when I picked it up, it was about 1/3 inch or 0.85 centimeters. The summer of 2018, I believe, is when I picked her up. And she has grown a lot faster than some of my other APHONOPELMA species. I originally had her in a vial where I kept, again, the bottom layers moist. She did a lot of burrowing. I continue with that setup. I give her room to burrow. And right now she is about, I would say probably close to 1.75 to 2 inches, or 4.5 centimeters to 5 centimeters or so. So she's pretty good size, and she picked up her adult colors very early on. I was shocked one day to see her molt, and she was probably just over 1.25 inches or so, and she sported those beautiful tones that the APHONOPELMA chalcodes sport. So she has always done some burrowing. She eats very well. She takes down good sized prey. She molts with regularity, and she seems to put on a decent amount of size with each molt. So I don't know if that has anything to do with her faster growth rate. It's been really neat to see. I got a funny feeling she's actually going to pass the next one in terms of growth and size at some point, because the next one has been taking a long time to grow, and that is, of course, my APHONOPELMA chalcodes Nikki. I got this one way back in October of 2013 as about 1.5 inches to 1.75 inch juvenile, sex juvenile. That's, I believe, about 4.45 centimeters or so. And in almost 10 years, she has reached a whopping, we're going to give it 3 inches or 7.62 centimeters. So she took a long time to grow. Now, when I first got her, she burrowed, but I was keeping like a corner moist. I didn't keep a lot of it moist. She was very, very shy, only eating much smaller prey than I would normally give spiders of that size. I had to start pre-killing things because I would drop prey in, little tiny prey items. They'd run down the burrow, freak her out, and she would be sitting there with the prey items sitting right underneath her, being too afraid to eat them. So I started doing pre-kill. She would also bury herself around November and reemerge in mid-April, almost to the day. It was amazing. She did this 3 years in a row, which makes me think that she was probably, unfortunately, a wild caught. A lot of the wild caught ones they'll detect that winter's coming. They bury themselves like they would in the wild because it gets very, very cold where the species comes from. This was originally sold to me as APHONOPELMA schmidti, but after a revision of APHONOPELMA, this got rolled in with A. chalcodes. But I know somebody told me they lived in the area where schmidti was from, and they said that they had snow on the ground. So it gets very, very cold there. So I think in the wintertime, she'd sense that, she'd bury herself, reemerge. But she is finally much more bold. I love this spider. She's become one of my all-time favorites. Obviously, I don't have names for most of my spiders. She's earned a name. She can be quite sassy and adventurous, and I absolutely love it. And next up, we have my APHONOPELMA eutylenum, or California ebony. After her recent rehouse, mine's burrowed a bit, and although I catch her out in the open, she will race to her burrow when disturbed. As a result, I wasn't able to get any brand new footage of this one. So I'm using what Billy shot during the last rehouse. Yes, I'm cheating again, but I wanted to make sure I could at least show what some of these things look like. But anyway, after looking up kind of this species, I found that the females resemble A. chalcodes a bit, but the males end up much darker. Basically, the males look like they're black, which is probably where the common name comes from, California ebony. I'm not expecting the females to be black spiders, but if anybody's raised them, correct me if I'm wrong. This one is finally showing a bit of color, which is awesome. I picked this one up again as a 1/2 inch sling, or 1.27 centimeters or so, back in January of 2021. And right now it's probably around 1 inch or 2.54 centimeters. So finally starting to pick up a bit of size, but again, it's been a very slow growing spider overall, which is obviously the theme we have today, and obviously why I don't do a lot of the videos on these guys or updates, because there's not a lot to update. Either I have a difficult time finding them, because I have found that if you set these guys up correctly, they tend to burrow and disappear a lot, or they can run to their burrows when disturbed, which I think is awesome because they're secure. But it's also the fact that not only don't you see them out all that much, but when you do, they haven't put on a lot of size. And then the last one we're going to be showcasing here is my APHONOPELMA bicoloratum, or Mexican bloodleg. My Lord, this one is pretty. She is just molted again, just like all the other ones we're talking about. I do give this one room to burrow. I keep the bottom, at least part of the substrate, moist at all times, the bottom layers. She seems to appreciate that. When she molted, she actually filled in her burrow, disappeared underneath. I could see when she molted, and that she'd been molted for a little while. So I waited a couple weeks. When she didn't come up, I carefully cleaned away the dirt in the entrance of her burrow, dropped the pre-killed prey item on top. She came up, immediately ate it. She's been eating fine since, hasn't filled in her burrow. But this is actually my second one. I picked it up in spring, about 2 years ago, I think. At that time, she was about 1 inch or 2.54 centimeters or so. At this point, she's looking to be about 1.5 inches, maybe 1 3/4 inches, or 3.81 centimeters. So she has been putting on some decent size, and obviously she is showing some of those adult colors, which are stunning. When I first saw these guys listed, I thought somebody had accidentally posted a photo of a Brachypelma baimi, or boimi, whatever you want to pronounce it, and come to find out, no, it was an APHONOPELMA species. So I immediately knew I wanted one. Now, I had one before. Unfortunately, I think I shared this story in an older video. She hit to a point where she was about a little bit smaller than this one here, molted, was showing her adult colors. I was so excited to show her off, and I went to check on her one day. She was just laying on the substrate, and I poked her. She didn't move. She was dead, just died. I still can't figure out what happened, but I was absolutely gutted by it. But luckily, this one here is doing very well. She's eating, growing, and just looking absolutely beautiful. As far as, especially with the APHONOPELMA, a lot of them do have those earthy tones, which I and many APHONOPELMA connoisseurs or aficionados, I guess connoisseurs, we're not eating them, but aficionados absolutely love those earthy tones. But I love the reddish tones on this one. Really does make me think of just a sleeker, a Brachypelma species, which is amazing. And then finally, the last one I'm going to talk about is my APHONOPELMA burica. I do not have any new footage of this one, and I'm just going to show a couple shots of her here, not talk about her all that much, but she is in an 8x8x7 reptile growth enclosure. She burrows. She stays burrow. I do not catch her out all that much at all, which is fine, although I'd love to get some pictures of her because she has that beautiful blue on her claricera and on her front legs, which just really shimmers under the right light. So every once in a while I'll come up here and I'll see her legs hanging out, but more often than not, she's buried down underneath. So I tried getting some shots of her. Unfortunately, it wasn't a go. I have to say, with this video, I have been trying to collect. I know I said I was going to do this one a while ago. I've been trying to collect footage of them for about a month, and this is the best I could do. So hopefully people appreciate it. We got some nice shots of her here, but these are not newer ones. Hopefully she'll come out at some point so I can get some new footage of her. All right, so a couple notes on the care for these guys. I always, give my APHONOPELMAs basically right through their life cycle room to burrow. Back in the day, I had read that these guys were terrestrial. They like it bone dry. And after doing some experimenting, it was actually an APHONOPELMA annex I had that I put into its little enclosure. It wasn't burrowing. It wasn't eating. And what I did is I put a little furrow down the side of the enclosure. I squirt water down so that it went down and moistened up the bottom layers of it. And within the next day, that spider had gone down, dug all the way down, dug all the way around the moist part, meaning it was craving that moisture and started eating like a champ. So from that point on, I gave all of mine room to burrow. I keep the bottom levels moist. Now, I don't treat these guys like true moisture-dependent species, wherein I, freak out if it gets a little dry. What I try to do is just keep that bottom layer. If it's a couple inches of substrate, keep the bottom layer moist, and that way they can dig down, find the level of moisture they need. A lot of these guys come from arid regions, but they also do some burrowing so they can get down and find that moisture if they need it. And I have found that they will come down on the drier days or in the wintertime. They'll dig down further in and go to that moist level. And I have found that in the summer, when it gets a little more humid, you catch them out and about more. But the good thing is mine have all eaten really, really well. I want to make that very clear. I know APHONOPELMA have a reputation for being spiders that can sometimes fast. I think part of that was due to the fact that a lot of the ones that were entering the hobby, at least over here in the US, were wild-caught specimens, and therefore they were kind of used to more the climate of the area they came from, and that can lead to fasting. My first one, Nikki, would fast for several months throughout the winter, and I'm pretty sure she was wild-caught. But most of mine are captive-bred slings, and they eat very well. So it's not a question of whether or not they're eating. I don't want people thinking that mine aren't growing very quickly because they go through stages where they don't eat. No, they're eating very, very well. They'll fatten up, and they'll just take a long time to molt. And when they molt, they're just not putting on a lot of size. But I'm enjoying the fact that they're finally, some of these guys are finally starting to show some hints of their adult colors. That bicoloratum is flipping gorgeous. And I'll be looking forward to doing another update when hopefully some of these start showing more of their adult colors, probably in the next, 30 years or so. We'll see. It'll be probably earlier than that, but just know it could be a while. So that will do it for this one. As always, if you liked it enough to subscribe, I totally appreciate it. Click the little circle up in there. I'll put another APHONOPELMA video down in here, something else up here. If you take the time to comment, I'll take the time to respond. Just know I can get behind sometimes. It can take me a couple days, but I usually do a really good job of getting back to everybody. Guys, as always, stay safe. Catch you all next time.